get into frame here. We are live, I do believe. I'm not in frame yet. There I am. Yeehaw. Well, hey, as you can see, we're getting some technical difficulties out of the way. But thank you for tuning in to the first episode of Piper's Pick. I'm your host, William.
And I am Sierra.
And today we're going to do a book and a movie. I'll let Sierra describe the format. Why don't you take it away?
Alrighty. So, how we do things around here is I will describe a book in very descriptive detail. I've had him look at the book cover, so he is going to judge the book by its cover, and then I'll get into my talk. And then when I'm done, we'll discuss a little, and then I'll hand the floor over to him where he will discuss a movie that he's seen that I haven't, and it'll be same thing vice versa. I just wanted to say welcome and good evening, guys. How is everyone doing? Hopefully the universe is treating you kindly. We're just working through some kinks and some technical stuff, so if anything happens and we go down, we'll get right back up to keep on going. So, with that, I will introduce my book, and the book that I read this time was For Algernon, written by Daniel Keyes. And I read the digital copy, but there's like 311 pages or something like that.
Yeah, and there's also like 4 or 5 different covers, variations. I looked at a bunch of them.
Yes. But okay, so before I get into my weird little facts and everything, your perception of the cover, what do you think is...
Okay, so on the cover there was a mouse and there was a maze. So I guess the first couple of guesses I would have is does it have anything to do with the workings of the brain?
Absolutely.
It does?
Yes.
Okay. Does it actually have something to do with a mouse?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so 2 for 2. It also had a maze. So does it have anything to do with this mouse learning how to get through this maze?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I could judge this book by its cover, so to speak.
Yeah, well, and there's actually really a lot behind it. I mean, that's it's very loaded, I guess. You are very, very accurate, but there's so much behind it. So,
okay.
This book was published as a short story in 1959.
Oh, boy.
And then it was published as an actual novel in 1966. So, it is very dated for its time. It's not a book that was written, like, futuristically or anything. So the themes in this book are very, that's actually how it was back in that time.
Right. Very, very time-oriented then.
Absolutely. This book was very controversial in, like, the school's reading curriculum and everything, because there are some sexual themes and there are a couple different themes that
might get some parents upset.
Yes.
What were you given this book in school?
Yes, actually, I've read this book 3 times, guys.
Okay, so explain the year it was given to you and if you had any problems, what you were just discussing.
Okay, so it was back in 2003 or 4, maybe.
Okay.
I was in the 7th grade, and for our English class, we had to read For Algernon. Now, I don't remember a whole lot of it from when I was a kid, because I'm a little bit older now.
Yeah, and when you reread something years later, you can pick up a heck of a lot more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I kind of breezed through it to get through my class. And then I read it again when I was 20. And I picked up on some themes, but at that point...
Were you still missing some stuff?
I was still missing some stuff. And so going through and reading this book a 3rd time, it really... being a little more aged and a little more wise,
a little more mature.
A little bit. I was able to pick up on some things that I wasn't beforehand. So, anyway, well, let's get to the meat and potatoes of this, shall we?
Yeah, let's get into the book.
We are introduced to an individual named Charlie Gordon.
Okay. Is he a scientist?
No.
No? Okay.
I will warn you guys, This there's a lot of ways to be politically correct about some of the things that have gone on in the book or whatnot. I'm going to,
Well, just give it to us the way the book gives it to you.
Okay.
And then everybody else can get their meaning or,
The language in the 1950s and 60s, I'm not quite comfortable straight up calling out like that. So
okay. I'm following, sort of.
We meet a high-functioning, mentally challenged individual. He is very handicapped.
Do they they throw the R word around a lot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm
and
following.
a lot of the other words that come with it that could be used to insult people who may have a little disability.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna stick with mental handicap or mental disability. Charlie Gordon is an adult, and he works in a bakery.
Okay.
And
you work in a bakery.
I know.
Yeah.
See, but actually, there's not a whole lot of bakery stuff in the book per se.
Mackenzie is watching, and she said that we read this too, and she liked it.
Well, hi, Mackenzie.
So it sounds like she was given it in school too.
Yeah, see, and that's depending on where you go to school and what the curriculum is and everything. Like, there was another book that I read in high school that my dad actually had to sign a permission form for.
What book was that?
Until They Bring the Streetcars Back by, I believe, Stanley Gordon West.
Wow, so what was so inappropriate your dad had to... I know we're getting off on a tangent, but what was so inappropriate?
It was a book that involved incest, rape, a dead baby in a freezer.
And they gave... What year did they give you that in school?
I was a junior in high school.
Wow, okay.
Yes. But that one, it was either you could read this or The Grapes of Wrath, I think it was. And I was like, I want to read, because the cover got me.
Yeah.
And it was a picture of a streetcar. Also a book that was written within this time frame.
Okay.
So very dated, definitely wouldn't translate well to the climate of society today.
Mm-hmm.
So Charlie works in a bakery, and he is subletting a room kind of from someone who like keeps an eye on him.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes to a dog.
Oh,
Mr. Buddy.
He stepped on something. Go ahead.
Yeah, keep in mind we do have a dog, and he does like to get friendly and vocal sometimes, so he's not trying to be a jerk. He just wants to be part of the show. But, so he's staying in a room. Someone's kind of keeping an eye on him, but he's very high functioning, so he can live on his own kind of. And he goes to an adult school. It was like almost like a night school, but it was like I can't remember the name, but it was a home for mentally handicapped, or school for mentally handicapped
But
adults.
was it there to help him with the stuff he did struggle with?
Well, they tried to teach him, like, how to read, how to write, they tried to teach him the skills that he would need. Yeah. And he was very, very eager to learn, which actually we'll come to a little bit later, because that actually is kind of an integral part as to why he was chosen for what he was, etc. So, there is a college, and they have a neurologist that worked there and a psychologist, and they think they found a way to cure mentally handicapped.
So let me guess. In the they called it mental retardation in the book?
Yes.
Is that the terminology?
Well,
they use?
no, they retarded is what they.
Yeah.
Okay. So Charlie has a teacher at this school, and her name is Alice Kinnian. And she's in tight with some of the people at the Beekman University.
Beekman? Okay.
She's in tight with some of these people, and she wants to sign Charlie up for this experimental surgery that will boost his IQ.
Okay.
And they had to track down his sister and get permission from her, because she was his only living relative that was like of sound mind.
Okay.
So she gives permission, and Charlie is he's sent to the university and he meets with all the doctors and everything, and he's all happy and excited, like he doesn't really understand what's going on.
Or why he's really there.
And what I find interesting about this book is this book was written in, like, journal point of view. So each chapter is a progress report because they need to keep tabs on him for the study.
Yeah.
So they have him write progress reports.
That's interesting.
In the beginning, it is very hard to read because things are spelled backwards and they're spelled wrong and there's no punctuation.
Like in the book itself, it's not
yes,
like that?
It is written like Charlie is writing the book.
Oh.
So you can really get a feel for his development as the story goes because it's through Charlie's eyes.
Like, and literally you're reading like if he wrote it.
Yes.
Okay.
So, it can be a little difficult at first.
As he gets any better, does the writing in the book get...
Oh, yes.
Okay, more clear?
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll actually get to that, too.
Okay.
So he's got all these things that he needs to do, and they talk to him, and they explain everything to him the best that they can. Mm-hmm. And they're like, we've done this surgery on a mouse. The only surgery that's been successful has been a mouse named Algernon. So they were like, would you like to meet Algernon, Charlie? And he's like, yeah, sure, And they're like, okay, well, we're going to have you do tests against him. Because at this point...
So they pit Charlie against the mouse?
Kind of, yes. They're going to show him how the test is done. And then they're going to have Charlie do the tests. And then eventually they'll have Charlie race Algernon in these mazes.
Okay.
And one of the mazes that Charlie does is like a pen in like a wooden maze. But every time he bumps a wall, it sends him an electric shock.
Okay.
50s and 60s, from what I understand, like to use electric shock as a form of everything.
Yes. Is this... the way he's treated or the conditions he live in, is it a sad book like that or no?
No.
Because it could have been. That time was very brutal.
Yes.
Okay.
But the way that Charlie saw everything is that everybody was his friend.
Okay.
So he didn't understand when people were laughing at him, they were making fun of him, and it wasn't just some big joke that he was like, I can make somebody laugh.
Yeah.
It's and that's one thing that he learns. This whole book is really a journey from where he was to where he goes, and just the expansion of his existence, I guess, if you could say it that way.
Okay.
So they don't really explain a whole lot about what his surgery entails. They throw in like hormone blockers, but that's really as scientific as it gets. It just says that Charlie has a surgery. I mean, not in less words, but
so he goes under the knife.
Yes, he does. So, after he does all these tests, they make him do a maze. They make him do a couple other tests, and they make
this poor guy Charlie is starting to sound like just a big lab rat, an experiment.
And it comes back around to that too once he's...
It's just me projecting further into the story than you told.
You're on the right track, is what I guess I'm trying to say.
Alrighty.
So you have Professor Niemer. He's in charge of the experiment. So he's like, bigwig scientist, shaking hands of people at the foundation, And then you have Dr. Strauss, who is the neurologist and the psychologist. So not only are they having him do like mazes and ink blot tests and, like association tests and everything. He has actual therapy sessions with one of the doctors that's in charge of this project.
Oh, wow.
And then you have a man named Bert, who is an undergrad, who is working on his thesis. So that's kind of how he falls into this.
And this Bert guy, he worked at that Beaker Institute?
Beekman?
Beekman?
Yep. Well, because he's the grad student, so he's working on his thesis. So he's working in the lab, working with these guys as part of his... education or... furthering his knowledge seeking, I guess.
Okay.
And Charlie starts to get real frustrated. He's really mad because, he can't do the maze right. He keeps getting shocked. And for a second, there's like a little rivalry between him and Algernon.
This is after his surgery.
Before and after.
Okay.
See, because they continue the testing, but before he has his surgery, he is starting to get a little irritated that Algernon's so good and he's winning and, beat by a mouse,
Yep. That's got to be frustrating.
And then he has his surgery and he wakes up and the first couple days go okay, it's still normal, like how he was writing in the beginning and everything. But then he was talking about how he was starting to get frustrated because he doesn't feel smarter.
Right.
Which, when you're reading the book, is actually kind of the opposite of what because Charlie's happy-go-lucky, eager to please, just wants to make people laugh.
So this is starting to change him.
Yes. I mean, he's starting to change already. There's subtle ways that we see how we see it, but he doesn't notice it yet.
Right.
So he's growing, but he doesn't see it.
Okay.
And he starts to get frustrated. And then he goes to a therapy appointment and he goes, I don't understand why I have to do this, and he starts questioning authority.
Yeah.
And one of the scientists was going to shut it down, and Dr. Strauss was like, no, don't. He's questioning authority. This is progress. So you see the little changes. And then he was talking, or he wrote, like, they want me to use a dictionary to spell out the hard words. So now they're trying to teach him, even though he doesn't know the spelling, to look it up. And so difficult words, like he starts using bigger words, and then he starts spelling everything right. His and this is all within a matter of days.
Wow.
Like a week span, if I'm correct, it could
so
be a
so his
loose.
development is like accelerating.
Yes.
Okay.
Because each chapter is labeled a progress report and a date.
Okay.
So I didn't take notes on the date, so it's all loose guesstimation from here, but within a week, he started spelling correctly, he started using punctuation, he's starting to, question authority, and
they start to get impressed with him.
Yes. So, hold on, I have to look at my notes. Sorry, guys. It's kind of almost like weight loss, and we've talked about this recently, that the person trying to lose the weight doesn't notice the weight is gone until much later.
Right, yep.
So we, as people viewing in on Charlie's life, we can see
the
where
change
it's
right
going,
away.
but he can't.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
He started getting these headaches after surgery. Nothing, like, too major. But they also gave him a little machine to play at night because they thought, maybe...
So is this headache a side effect from what happened to him, or it's not explained? I mean, obviously he went under the knife, but...
He complains of headaches a couple of times.
Okay.
In the beginning, in the uprise, and then in the downfall. So, but he doesn't really say they're like splitting headaches that hurt me so bad or anything like that,
Mackenzie asked, do you think the trial started changing him, or the fact he started looking into dictionary and such?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I would say both.
I would say both, but probably maybe the trial a little more first, because you could look in a dictionary but not understand what the words are.
So
so that maybe
going under the knife maybe helped him understand what he was looking at.
The way I interpret it, and see, that's the beautiful thing about books, you guys, is I can read this book and feel one way about it and interpret it one way, and then you guys can all interpret it in different ways. That's just the beauty. It's like poetry. You know what I mean?
Right.
One person can see it this way and one person sees it this way. For me, I think it was the trial first, and then the dictionary just kind of like supplemented that, because eventually he reaches a point where he does look at a dictionary and understand words. And then his intelligence skyrockets, okay?
Oh, it expands
again? Both him and Algernon's progress is through the roof. Like, it's speedy. Like, the rate at which
everything they did to him with the blockers and all that, did they do the same thing to this mouse long time before?
Yeah, well, it wasn't too long before, because Algernon had already had his surgery by the time... because they needed to clear it through with
Sure.
an animal
Yeah.
before
Yep.
they tried on a human.
Absolutely.
And, you know,
But the mouse has gone through the same changes.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that's one thing that I kind of like, is they kind of mirror that a little bit. Like, and eventually Charlie goes from disliking Algernon before his surgery to afterwards seeing him as someone who could kind of relate, and he has a weird little bond with him at this point.
Gotcha. Well, they're both basically lab rats.
Yes.
I mean, at this point.
Yes. And at a certain point in the book, Charlie does start to feel like people forget that he's an actual human being.
Wow.
You know, and I'll get to that here in a couple seconds. But there's just so much to this book. There's
like more concerned with the potential and the progress than the person.
Yes, or, you know, the gain that it could get them and their foundation. So they're like, hey, we have to get this right. And, like, they rush in things and, you know.
We're going to get funding.
Yeah.
We're going to get tenure.
There's a couple parts in the book where Charlie, after because eventually he reaches a point where he's considered a genius. Like, his IQ is through the roof. He can speak all sorts of different languages, and during his development on his uprise, he's spending a lot of time at the university. So eventually he gets curious and he starts straying into the cafeteria and, you know, listening in on conversations. And then
people are like paying him no mind.
Yeah. And then as he gets a little smarter, he starts asking professors questions, and he's asking questions that even these professors can't explain.
Answer.
And he's all like, you know, and I actually have a reference point here.
That's very cool.
Where he was talking about college. Let me see if I can find it here. He goes, now I understand one of the most important reasons for going to college and getting an education is to learn that the things you've believed all your life aren't true and that nothing is as it appears to be.
Wow.
So that's a very deep thought.
Yeah.
Coming from an individual
that's handicapped.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, at this point
yeah, he's a genius now. At any point does he reflect back on his journey? Like,
well, on his journey,
like, obviously once you become a genius, you are not the same person you once were a week ago.
Right. Well, and after he had his surgery, you know, they started, you know, we want you to play the sound machine at night because hopefully you'll absorb it in your sleep. And, well, you know how it was in the 1950s.
Yeah. They had a lot of things they thought were correct. Yeah,
you know, a lot of blinky lights, if you will.
Yeah.
And he starts getting annoyed at that. And then Professor Strauss wants him to start free associating. So whenever, because he remembers nothing from his childhood.
Charlie doesn't?
No, because his mom had his dad send him away. And we'll get into that. I mean, and I'm not doing this book justice, you guys. I mean, honestly, really, you need to read it for yourself because I'm trying to cram so much in.
Yeah, so you can't say it all, but it's very interesting though.
But
I like the scientific aspect and the
yes,
you know, the explosive growth and change. That's really neat.
And as someone who's very interested in psychology, just like, because you have to understand, like, he's emotionally stunted. He's, you know, so there's a lot to go. So now he's a genius, but I mean, and at that point, this whole book is a journey because it all starts with Dr. Strauss, like, let's start free associating. Every time you remember something, write it down. And then he starts remembering little blips from his life. And it really kind of sums everything up perfectly. And his mom was one of those ladies that was like, the house has to be perfect. I have to, you know, 1950s housewife, perfect outfit, you know. And when Charlie was an only child, she was like, he's just different. He'll, you know, she refused to acknowledge that her son was different from other people. Oh. She'll always be a lot of Charlie's memories were her shrieking, he'll be normal, he'll be just like other kids, he'll be even better.
Oh, that's
you know?
crazy.
it just really makes you feel for Charlie that he has to learn all of this way after the fact.
It sounds like it's an emotional journey as well.
It is. It's got a lot of everything. I mean, except for action and explosions, but you know,
we'll save that for my movie.
Right. Yeah, you come in with the explosions.
Yeah.
But his mom's name is Rose, and she's a piece of work.
She's a piece of work.
And the way she denied Charlie and treated Charlie when he was an only child changed when she got pregnant with another one and she found out that Charlie's sister Norma was normal.
Oh.
And it's saying that out loud now,
wow.
I think that's something that the author played on, Norma normal.
Yep.
You know,
I bet you're right.
And so there's a lot of flashes back into the past and everything, and one of the conditions of his surgery and everything that's going on is he can't tell anybody about it.
It's a secret?
Yes.
What's going on to him?
So
with him?
his intelligence is starting to climb, and he's at the bakery, and everybody's like, boy, Charlie, you're really acting strange. Something's not right with you. What's up, you know? And Charlie catches on to one of his coworkers stealing from the business.
Oh, wow.
And he's kind of in a position to where he was before greatly affected how people still looked at him after, because he wasn't allowed to say, hey, I had surgery to raise my IQ.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't say anything. And eventually, because it was so anti-Charlie, the things that were going on, Mr. Donner fired him from the bakery, which was a really big blow to him at that point in time in his development, because he's like, the situation with Mr. Donner's bakery was after Charlie went to go live with his uncle, Herman. Uncle Herman talked to his buddy, Mr. Donner, who owned a bakery, and was like, hey, will you give Charlie a job and look after him? Well, then Herman died. So then Charlie, you know, the person that he's subletting a room from knows Mr. Donner. Okay. So it's like this little community that's taking care of him. And he's like,
keeping an eye
I
out
told
for him.
your uncle you would always have a job here, but things aren't right, Charlie. And we're just going to have to let you go. I wish it wasn't this way. You know, so song and dance. And after that kind of crushed his spirit. He was like, that bakery was my home. And, you know, those... Another thing that he really touched in on is the smarter you are, he felt the less friends you had.
Oh,
but
that's sad.
It's because he was learning that those people weren't really his friends. They were making fun of him and using him as their entertainment.
He could see it now.
And he knows it now. So it just kind of crushed him to know that he spent that whole time not really having any true friends.
Wow.
And it gets really, really complicated. Like I said, there's several layers to this book. He ends up falling in love with his teacher, Alice Kinnian.
Oh, at
the teacher that referred him for the surgery, and she was like, I can't, you know, it's not right. And then his IQ was at its top, and
this was written in the 50s?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Well, 59, and then published as a novel in 66. I'm not sure how much was changed from then to then, but, you know, the final product it's a lot packed into the pages. It really is.
It sounds like it. It sounds like a climb inside of somebody's head.
So,
you know, type book.
Yes, very much so, because it's from his point of view. So you're seeing it through Charlie's eyes, and he's explaining how you feel. And like, I get into what I read. Like, I'll talk to my book. I'll laugh at my book. If my book makes me cry, I will cry. I mean, I'm a very emotional individual.
Nothing wrong with that.
You know, I can't tell you how many times I've been
Old Yeller. Did you cry?
Oh, absolutely. Especially animals, you guys. I am like the biggest softie for animals. Like, yeah.
Okay, so what, he's got this rivalry with the mouse.
Okay, and then but that goes away after he kind of bonds with him after surgery.
Right. But where is he at in his journey? Like towards like almost the end of the book. What's going on with him?
Okay, so towards the end of the book, he makes the startling realization that just as quick as he inclined, he'll decline if not faster.
What precipitates the decline for him? Does he even know?
That's not really explained. It's just that
like
there
whatever
was
he gained is starting to
there
lapse?
was an error in the science. Because it's an experiment, you know, this is how you learn things.
Yep.
They told Charlie before the surgery, they were very clear, like, it might not do anything, it might not be permanent. It might make your IQ lower than when
you started.
Yes.
Yep.
So, eventually, like, they end up, there's one event that I want to touch up on.
Okay.
And it's the feeling like a show piece, you know, or a lab rat.
Yep.
A lab mouse, so to speak. There's a conference in Chicago. This book is based in New York.
Oh, okay.
There's a conference in Chicago. And it's kind of like shake the hands, get more money, you know, produce their findings.
Wheel him out to show the experiment, say how great it is, and get their funding.
And Charlie starts to get really mad. Because at one point in the book, he literally said, I wanted to stand up and say, you know, for all the sakes, I'm human. You know? And then they kind of moved on to Algernon. Mm-hmm. And he said for a second, he thought about opening the door and letting Algernon run in the conference hall. But instead of doing that, he just took Algernon and then he left. So
he stole the mouse?
Yeah, he stole the mouse and he stole the mouse and went and got his own apartment in New York and he split off from the university for a while.
So their experiment ran amok and disappeared.
Waited a couple days, got a hold of everybody, and they're like, I'll tell you what, keep doing the progress reports.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll go from there, you know, and then reconvene later and see if we can negotiate.
Yeah.
So he gets his own apartment, and he's got Algernon now, and he's got the money from the university, because they agreed to pay him, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. And eventually he realizes that, you know, as fast as you go up, you could come down, if not quicker.
Yeah.
So he starts working on his case, if you will, while he's still a genius. So he's trying to figure out...
to correct or fix whatever's going to happen, or what's going to happen.
Yes.
Wow. I'm going to have to read this book.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be the first one that you explained to me in detail that I have to read.
Because... And I'm actually kind of surprised that they let... Maybe I just feel things too deeply to feel like this is like a lower level reading. I mean, like, you can understand the words and everything, but like the feelings behind it are very...
The emotional impactfulness.
Yes. Like... And I mean, part of what made it so controversial is Charlie couldn't be intimate with Alice.
The teacher?
Yes. Because every time he tried, he swore the old Charlie was watching him.
Weird.
But I think it's because he was so eager to please Alice before, like, he was close with her, that the...
Wow. That's kind of strange.
Yes, very much so. But he meet his neighbor in New York after he splits from the university. Mm-hmm. She means nothing to him. Mm-hmm. I mean, not like, whatever, but he's not in love with her like he was
not on
with
a pedestal.
Alice. Yes.
Yeah.
So he was able to do stuff with her that he couldn't with Alice.
Wow, strange.
And so he kind of, and Charlie discovered at this point that if he drank alcohol, he would revert back to old Charlie.
Really?
So,
while he was drunk, or you mean?
Yeah, while he was drunk. Like, his stupor was like... Well, you know, there's silly drunk, and then...
Yeah. But his mannerisms came back.
Yeah, like, you know,
like the old Charlie.
And he explains the look on the face, like the slacked smile and, like, the empty eyes.
My brother has a tell. If my brother is intoxicated, it looks like he's had a stroke.
Yeah.
You can just... I know what you mean. I have a visual image.
And... Faye, his next door neighbor that he got involved with, couldn't understand, like, she thought it was like a comedy act, kinda.
Really?
But he didn't tell her about his surgery
Yeah,
or
she didn't
anything.
have the data or the info.
If you think about it from a scientific standpoint, alcohol is an outside variable.
Yes.
That they couldn't really account for in Algernon.
Gotcha.
So, and I mean, really towards the end, he kind of comes full circle, you know. But when he comes back down, it's quick.
Oh, and so he does lose it.
Yes.
Oh, how sad.
And they start with Algernon.
So, like, this dude, he's become a genius from what he was before.
Yes.
And while he's a genius, he knows he's going to lose it, and then he starts to lose it, and he actually does.
Yes. And I think what's even sadder than that...
That's rough.
...is... the way I understand, Charlie kind of reverted to his same IQ, if not a little lower.
Damn.
But he still remembered he was a genius. He knew all these words. So, like, on his decline, when he would get frustrated because he would wake up one day and, oh, I can't read French anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Or that word meaning is gone.
And so,
or...
you kind of see, I guess if I can put it all in a nutshell... you see him claw his way to the top and work through all of his stuff. And he struggles with every aspect of it except for, like, the actual learning. Because, I mean, he could read a book in hours.
But for all that struggle to end up back where you were or beneath where you were.
Yeah.
That's rough.
And, well, you know...
Do you think there's a hidden meaning behind that? Or we'll wait to the very end of the book when you give your review.
So when they start,
because we are at 51 minutes.
Oh, okay, good. That's about perfect timing,
Awesome.
actually.
Yep. Just wanted to let you know.
When they start notice, first it's weird little ticks that Algernon start displaying, like random fits of rage, or he would refuse to eat for days. He'd run a maze and then he'd get messed up and turn around and turn back and he couldn't finish the maze. And then he'd get frustrated and hurl himself at the wall.
Oh, wow.
And then, like, he started biting people. And then they don't really dig deep back into any testing for Algernon on his decline. Mm-hmm. And I swear to you, the first 2 times I read this book, because there's spoilers in this book, or in this podcast that we're doing, I am going to read the last line.
Yeah, so at the end of this podcast, or at the end of Sierra's presentation here, she's going to let you know what book she's reading next after she reviews this book, so you guys can read the book for next time if you decide to do that, because we do go into detail in the movie, and we go into detail on the book thoroughly. So if you don't want spoilers, watch the movie or read the book.
Thank you.
Maddie says she has arrived.
Awesome. Hello, Maddie. What is up, sundog? All right, so...
She associates it with a mouse. She's right on board. She knows what we're talking about.
So, they start noticing Algernon's decline. Because his surgery was done first, naturally he would go first. Then Charlie starts to slip. He starts getting more irritable. He starts forgetting things. And that's just he starts noticing minor headaches.
Yep.
At this point, he's like, I can't take it anymore. They arranged to have him moved into a home for handicapped adults. He went and toured the facility to see where he was going, which kind of, you know...
Was he still, like, smart enough to know what was going on?
Yes, at this point...
So that broke his heart completely,
yeah.
Didn't it?
Damn. And I guess it is kind of sad and a little... It's not really a whole joyful book, to be honest.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a lot of smiles and laughing in this one.
No. But, so Charlie starts regressing now.
Yep.
And before he starts to lose it all, he's working on, you know, like how to help the case. He got his thesis typed up and everything and sent off to...
Okay, I'm crossing my fingers. Does he fix himself?
No.
Oh.
No.
Damn it.
And then comes the post where, you know, he got his thesis handed in. He's like, I've done everything for this project I can. I'm just gonna kind of go regress now. Mm-hmm. And then there comes the post that Algernon died today.
Oh.
And of course I got sad.
Yeah, because you knew what was coming.
Yeah. Well, and see, that's...
Or you think what's coming, whatever.
That's why I want to pick up on how I interpreted the end versus how somebody else can interpret a book, because I actually don't think the first 2 times I read this book I interpreted the end correctly like I did this time.
Okay.
He agrees that when he gets too bad that the people from the university will pick him up and take him home to the handicapped adult center. And he starts regressing really, really hardcore. And then he said, at the very last words of this book are, P.S. Please, if you get a chance, would you put some flowers on Algernon's grave in the backyard? And that's it. So I don't know the first 2 times I read this book.
So it doesn't go into,
It wasn't like Charlie died the end. You know what I mean? It's very kind of open.
Yeah.
See, the first...
Everything that happened to Algernon was happening to Charlie, but it doesn't continue the story far enough for Charlie to have died. Pretty much.
Right. So the first 2 times I read this book, I interpreted it that Charlie died. Which I think is why I ended up crying as hard as I did at the end the first 2 times.
Well, it makes sense, because that's what I would think, is that, you know...
Because that's what happened to Algernon.
Correct.
But this time, reading it, I interpreted it as, I'm going to the center. Mm-hmm. I know I'm not going to come back from this. And,
Maddie says, I haven't read this book yet at all, but I need to. Got a copy I can borrow?
I'll have to look in my trunk of books. I might have a physical copy for you. I'll have to look. I'll get back to you on that.
Okay, so the last words kind of leave it vague and leave it up to you to figure out kind of what happened.
But how the last few chapters are structured, this time reading it, I feel like he went to the home.
So he didn't die, but
he's in the home.
He was never going to get that boost again. And
I think one of the most heartbreaking things for me is after he struggled and clawed his way to the top, and he was like, oh, I'm a genius, and he learned all this stuff, and then he developed mentally and dealt with things from his past, and for him to lose everything, but still remember that he was a genius.
That's what for him to know he was losing it is remarkably horrifying. It would be like knowing you have dementia.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. That would be scary.
Like waiting for something to come. Like, almost kind of like the age-old, if you knew how you were going to die, would you want someone to tell you?
Yep. Nope.
Nope.
I sure
Surprise
would not.
me.
I sure would not.
But, I would rate this book probably 3.5 bookmarks.
That's right. Tell them what your how you review now.
So, how I review the book, I just kind of take things like how it made me feel and the overall like mindset of it and everything, and then I rate it 1 to 5 bookmarks. 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. And actually, I will give it a 3.75 bookmark.
3.75.
Because 3.5 just doesn't cut it, but 4 doesn't either, because it was kind of sad, and it was... But it definitely kind of makes you question, like...
And that's out of 5 bookmarks?
Out of 5 bookmarks, yes.
Okay, so almost 4.
Almost 4 bookmarks out of 5.
Yeah, that sounds like a must-read. I realize it's set in the 50s and everything, but, man, I don't know. I'm going to have to read that, because it does sound very interesting, man. But it sounds like a very sad journey.
And it is, you know, and as someone who's interested in psychology, the psychology that they throw into it and everything is very... It's just a very interesting book. There's multiple facets of this book that interest me, that's unique to my personality.
Right on.
So because I really like this book, you might not. You might think it's a grudging read, but you want to read as fast as Charlie is progressing and then as fast as he declines. And there are some things in there that if you're not paying attention, you could miss.
Skip over.
But hands down, it's not like a light leisurely read, but I would recommend giving it a read just to, say you read it, just to maybe look at things differently.
I'm going to start my movie Dark City. It was made in 1998. I got a little blurb to read for you. Go ahead and monitor chat for me.
Okay.
And we're going to switch over to Dark City. It was a really good movie. I've seen it multiple times. I'm going to try to explain this in a way that everybody can get it. But all right, so here's the beginning. Dark City is a 1998 neo-noir science fiction film directed by Alex Proyas and starring Rufus Sewell, Kiefer Sutherland, Jennifer Connelly, Richard O'Brien, and William Hurt. The screenplay was written by Proyas, Lem Dobbs, and David S. Goyer. Sewell, I'm saying his name wrong, plays John Murdoch, an amnesiac man who finds himself suspected of murder. So, that's the only little info I'm giving you.
Question for you right off the bat. Do they give a year in which this is, or does it not matter what year it is?
It does
other
not,
than in the future.
It does not give a year, but it looks very noir, like 50s, 60s, but there is no date. There's no time frame.
Unclear.
Yep, very unclear. So in the very, very, very beginning, as soon as the movie opens up, you're panning through space, almost like Star Wars. Stars are pinpricks. Slowly from that, you start to scroll down from the stars, and then you see a cityscape. And it's all foggy, and it's very dark. Not scary necessarily, but...
just the way it's shot and framed.
Yes, it's very drab. Very, very, very drab.
Almost like The Crow, kinda. How it's just very...
Very much like The Crow.
Dark tone, dark colors, very dark lighting.
Absolutely. Very, very, very much. It slowly pans down to the city skyline. And the camera, like, as it's swooping down, you see a large building with, like, a hotel letters, and, like, letters are, like, kind of, like, falling off and half glowing, and some aren't. And there's a big green window. And this green window, like, almost looks like a fishbowl. It's weird. Anyway, so the camera starts to zoom in, and it goes through the window, and now you're in what looks like a bathroom. There's a chair sitting there with somebody's pants, shoes, like not a briefcase, but a suitcase sitting there, and you see a guy in a bathtub. And the guy's in the bathtub, and he's naked. He's got a drop of blood in the center of his head, like right between his eyes. And he's unconscious, or it's unclear. And the light in the room is swinging. So, like, something happened, some kind of movement happened in the room that you weren't privy to.
Yeah.
Okay? So, this guy opens his eyes. He messes around in the tub for a second, and he sits up. And clearly the guy's confused. He doesn't recognize the room he's in. He gets up, and the floor is slick. There's water on the floor. But he didn't spill water, so it's kind of weird. It's unexplained.
Was he, like, mind swapped? Is he still the same person as...
Awesome theories, but no. Okay. Now, as he gets out of the tub, he steps down onto the cold tile. It's, like, very green. Very, very, very greenish.
Gritty.
Yeah. There's a syringe sitting there, but it doesn't look like a medical syringe. It looks different. It almost looks like it's more glass than plastic, and it's got a almost like, you know how a beetle's wings unflap?
Yeah.
When it flies, it almost has like it's got a piece that is kind of like that's laying there on the floor. All right, let me go back to my notes here. John, the guy in the bathtub's name is John Murdoch. We don't learn that for a few more seconds here, but He's uneasy to stand. He almost slips. He stumbles about, finding his footing. He makes his way to the mirror, and
very,
that's when he...
like, lethargic and, like...
Yeah, he doesn't know where he's at. And when he looks in the mirror, he sees the blood, and he wipes it from his face. And he looks at it, and there's no mark on his face other than that little drop. So the very next thing you see, John starts throwing his clothes on. Or are they his clothes? He doesn't even know. He holds them up to himself to, like, make sure that they fit. Do you know what I mean? So, like, clearly... So, like... he picks up the shoes and he puts them to his feet. He doesn't know they're his, so he gets dressed.
Yeah, make sure they all fit before he just.
Yep. So he gets dressed and he leaves the bathroom. Let's see here. Oh, okay, there we go. John opens the door, leaving after getting dressed. He doesn't seem to remember where he is. As he steps down the steps from the bathroom, he knocks a fishbowl over that was sitting on the steps. So, like, the bathroom has a couple steps leading down into, like, the hotel room that he's staying in.
Yeah.
And on one of the steps is actually a fishbowl. He kicks it or he knocks it over with his foot.
Is the fishbowl effect a common theme in this movie?
Sort of. The fishbowl
They use
effect,
it a lot.
Yeah, the fishbowl effect is basically the
Or
going
the fisheye lens.
Yeah, going into windows, kind of seeing what's inside of the room after they've showed you what was outside the room. It's kind of a weird thing like that. And there's flashes as well.
Does it signify like an alternate, like, not quite reality, but reality?
Yes, actually it does. It's this movie, man. It is insane. I suggest everybody watch it. So he knocks over this fishbowl and it breaks. A small goldfish starts to flop on the ground, and it zooms in on its mouth as it's gasping for more water to push over its gills for air. Like the fish is suffocating.
Yeah.
You know. Let's see here. John Murdoch. He picks up the goldfish to save it. As he stands with the goldfish, he walks past that weird syringe again that's on the floor. He puts the goldfish in the bath. Now I don't know how a fish would live in a bath, but
yeah,
he cups his hands and he picks up this goldfish and he puts it in the tub so that it survives, which is not important, but it kind of gives you a glimpse of he may not know who he is,
but he's still like a compassionate character in a way.
He took the time to save a fish that he didn't, you know.
It's my kind of person. Save them fish, yo.
So still unsure, John picks up other items from inside the room, trying to get, jog his memory or whatever.
Is he panicking because he's like, I don't know who I am?
Sort of. Yeah. He doesn't know why he's there. So he looks down and he grabs the suitcase and there's a KH on it. He rubs his finger over it, hoping to jog some kind of memory. KH and nothing.
Just initials.
Yeah, it's just initials. John opens the suitcase and looks as if he's checking the clothes. The ones that are in there, not the ones on the chair, but he starts to pull clothes out of the suitcase and checking if it's his.
Yeah.
Is this my suitcase?
Are my initials KH?
Yep. He fumbles through the case until he picks up a postcard from Shell Beach. John looks it over carefully. As he's looking at this postcard, it looks like a 1950s or 60s postcard, and it says, "Welcome to Shell Beach." A flash happens, almost like a memory. It's a young boy, maybe John. He steps out onto a dock, and there's bright lights and like a ferry, and he's talking to somebody, and then it cuts. It's a very short flash, but Murdoch seems to remember a beach, but only a flash of it. It happens a few times. Just then the phone rings in the hotel room. And this is where it kind of feels like the Matrix a little bit, ladies and gentlemen. It really does feel like the Matrix. The phone rings. John picks up the phone and KS, or is it KH, starts talking. "You are confused, aren't you? Frightened. That's all right. I can help you." John asks, "Who are you?" I am your doctor. Now, you must listen to me. You have lost your memory. There was an experiment. Something went wrong. your memory was erased. Do you understand me? John says, no, I don't understand. What is going on here? The doctor starts talking again. Listen, there are people coming for you as we speak. We must not let them find you. You must leave now. John drops the phone as he walks around the bed, and he sees a half-naked woman dead on the floor with spirals cut into her flesh that has been there the whole time. She's dead. John stumbles by the body, bumping a table, and a bloody blade falls to the floor. John opens the door to the hotel room and looks to his right, where the elevator has just arrived. And there's 3 men inside. Are these men after him? Right. Are these who the doctor was referring to?
Could you just imagine the sheer terror of, like, waking up in a body, like, you don't know who you are, you don't know where you are, you don't know what's going on, and then you hear something like that, and so you're like, oh, great, you know?
Yeah, well, it feels like the Matrix, where they were telling Neo, they're coming for you, they're gonna find you. But anyway, that's kind of where the similarities stop with that. But the bloody knife was sitting right out there on the thing. He bumps it. He falls to the floor. He's like, I'm grabbing my suitcase. I'm getting the F out of here.
Right.
So he opens the door and he turns to his right and the elevator's there and there's 4 people standing there. So John bolts down the hallway and heads down the stairs as 3 pale figures emerge from the elevator. As they approach the hotel room John was in, it shows the front desk. So as they're walking to where John was just at, John's bolting down the stairs and cutting to the right, and he's trying to make it out of the place.
Yeah.
So as they reach his door to where he was, he makes it to the bottom of the steps, and he cuts around the corner, and there is almost the I don't know, the clerk, the bell clerk, whatever you want to call him. But something is weird and amiss. Okay, so approach the hotel room John was in. It shows the front desk and of the hotel and its clock. So the guy is sitting there at like where you ding the bell and get service, yeah. And there's a clock right above him. Okay, the clock is stuck at 12 midnight. Okay, the guy sitting at the desk is asleep. John turns to his right after looking at the clock. Looking at the guy sleeping on the job, he turns to his right, and there's 3 people sitting in chairs. They're asleep. Everyone in the building seems to be asleep at this point. And the clock has stopped at midnight. So,
does that mean time was paused for they to come after them? So,
I am going to give you a bone. Yes. But we'll catch up.
To kind of like hide it from the human eyes.
Yeah, it's supposed to be very. You picked up on that right away. So, still stuck at 12. The guy at the desk seems to be asleep. John walks by the sleeping man and a phone booth, and in the booth, a woman is on the phone, leaning on the side, asleep, with the phone to her head, standing asleep.
So very obvious. It's like a spell or something.
Yeah, very obvious. Gotcha. Something is going on. More people are sleeping on the sofa in the hotel as he walks by. John walks past the guy at the front desk, and the clock chimes, and everyone starts to wake up. The clock hands start to move now.
So everything's waking up again, and time is back to unfrozenness.
Yes. Everyone starts to wake up. The guy at the front desk stops John. He looks, as he's waking up, he looks up. Oh, hey, John! And he looks behind him. He doesn't know his name is John. Let's see, where was I? Here we go. He says, hey, Mr. Murdoch, the automat called. Said you left your wallet there. I suggest you retrieve it since you only paid for 3 weeks, and that was up 10 minutes ago. John, very confused, asks, I have been here 3 weeks? Guy shows him the log. He turns the book around and pushes it in front of him. John looks at the clock. The hands are moving. John looks at the clock again, and the hands are moving. It's showing that he's noticing that the hands are moving and everyone's awake.
Yeah.
John says, don't worry about it. He'll pay later, and walks out. He walks to the end of a dock, and he throws his suitcase in the river. Why? Unclear.
Doesn't ever explain.
I mean, right now, he just woke up in a room with a dead body on the floor.
Right.
So like he doesn't know what's going on. If he's being set up, he feels he should get rid of the suitcase is what I imagine.
Ditch evidence if there is any such thing in there.
Yep, that's what I'm thinking. Okay, let's see here. John says we pay later. Yep.
Is this character a human?
Murdoch? Yes, Murdoch is human. Back at the hotel. Go ahead.
Are the people coming after him human?
Not necessarily. They're very pale. That's the only description I've given of them so far is that they're very pale. But okay, here we go. The guy back at the hotel who was the dinger boy.
The bellhop?
Yeah.
Or the
he gets up. He gets up and he says, "Sorry, Murdoch," and he slams the book. Murdoch's gone. He goes, "Rules are rules. 3 weeks is 3 weeks," and he starts to head upstairs to his hotel room.
Yeah. Does he get wiped out?
Let's see here. Rules are rules, and you didn't pay. The guy enters the room and is grabbed by the neck by one of the 3 pale ones that emerged from the elevator. One of the pale ones picks up the broken syringe that was on the floor. They seem to be investigating something. The head pale one starts asking questions, but talking very strangely. Pointing at the man, the pale one says, "Mr. Murdoch, yes." He talks weird.
Yeah.
And,
I imagine everybody in his group has a weird little...
Yep, they all have weird names. They're all very pale, and they're very, very strange. The pale one raises a hand, the man replies, "He's just left, not 5 minutes ago," talking about Murdoch. The pale one raises a hand and says, "Sleep," and the guy falls right to sleep. He puts him out. Cut, it jump cuts. You start to hear band music playing like a cabana, like 50s or 60s cabana music, you know?
Yeah.
And here's where you meet Jennifer Connelly.
She a love interest?
Yes, yes and no, and she's kind of a MacGuffin. She helps push the story along.
Gotcha.
But it jumps to a cabana with a club, with a woman in a club singing, Jennifer Connelly. I can't say her name. Connelly. The lady finishes singing and is approached by a woman who gives her a business card and says, "This guy says he was your husband's doctor. He wants to speak to you." She looks at the card. Daniel P. Schreiber, MD. It cuts again. She's arriving at the doctor's office. She walks down a long hallway that's very bleak like the rest of the series in the setting. Very sci-fi noir. She approaches and opens doors and sees Dr. Schreiber, who is Kiefer Sutherland. She sees Dr. Schreiber, who is Kiefer Sutherland, and he invites her in. "Oh, you must be Emma Murdoch. I have been meaning to talk to you." She asks what the maze in front of him is. He explains he's doing a crude experiment with a mouse, which is very funny that you had an experiment with a mouse in your book.
Right.
And this guy literally has got like a giant maze on the table, and he's watching this mouse.
May I ask you a question, sir?
Yes.
What made you pick this movie?
I've watched it a long time ago, and it's just it's enjoying to watch. I have no idea how it's coming across now, but right before we're done, I'm going to show you some pictures and stuff to show you some examples. So, okay, here we go. Let's see. In front of him, it explains it's a crude experiment with the mouse, but also explains that John has been coming to see him for a long time. She says it's strange because John's never mentioned it to her. And then the doctor tells her he was seeing John because of their marriage issues.
So
and then he says, feeling betrayed and whatnot. Whatever that means. It doesn't explain it right then.
Is he like a psychologist doctor or just someone who goes by doctor and is like the jack of all trades but master of none?
It's unclear.
Wow.
I can't tell you yet.
Yet or ever?
Oh, I can tell you eventually.
So it does.
Oh, yes. This comes full circle. Everything will be revealed to you. This isn't one of those that makes you guess or anything by the end. So he says, he's trying to get over the betrayal and whatnot. She explains that 3 weeks ago he packed a bag and left as he was very angry. The doctor tells her that John has suffered a psychotic break. Complete memory loss. He may be delusional, even violent. So if he contacts you, and he will, you must tell me immediately. It is imperative that I be the first one to reach him. Wherever your husband is, he is searching for himself. And then it cuts to John walking around the streets, saying his name to himself over and over again. John, John. Or Jay. The guy called him Murdoch. He didn't call him John. So he knows his name starts with a J, so he's going Jeff, Jason, and John. He gets to John, but it still doesn't ring a bell. But he's starting to get comfortable with Murdoch,
Yeah.
Still no recollection or memories of his own. He's pacing back and forth. Then he finally comes to John Murdoch. And then there's another jump cut. And here is introducing a third main character. He's a detective. And this is the Sewell character. The actor who plays Sewell plays this guy. I believe I have his name in here somewhere. But
was this guy lying to her to kind of... Or was everything he was telling her factual?
The doctor?
Yes.
Unclear. All she knows is that 3 weeks ago, yes, over whatever marital relations problem they had, he packed a bag and bolted 3 weeks ago.
Gotcha.
That's her recollection of the events of what happened. Okay. So it cuts to a weird man playing an accordion. The man's phone rings. Rufus Sewell is the actor's name. Seems to be a detective. So he gets a call, and they're informing him about some crime that happened. And so it cuts again. This time he's walking into the John Murdoch's room where the lady is dead on the floor. Let's see here. Okay, cuts to the man. Yep. Next scene, the detective arrives at the hotel to inspect the crime scene and ask questions. Talking to the hotel guy, you notice now... The guy, the ding ding, that guy?
Yeah.
He is now black and has been swapped. He's got the same mannerisms. He's got the same type of vocal, the way he would say words, but it's a different person there now. Huh. The last time you saw the white guy who was there originally, the pale person told him to sleep. The next thing you know, the detective shows up and there is a different person there helping him.
So that kind of keeps anybody from really figuring out what's going on because these characters are interchangeable, the pale people.
So this guy has been swapped. The guy who said you 3 weeks were up. The detective gets to room 614. He walks the hallway inspecting everything as he gets closer to John's room. The detective enters as photos of the crime scene are being taken and inspects the crime. Other cops are freaked out at the murder. Across town, John Murdoch looks closely at his fingerprints as if they could possibly tell him something. I mean, he's zoomed in on him as if they're going to, be like, hey, John.
Yeah, you did this 3 weeks ago.
Absolutely. As if they could tell him who he really was. As it pans back, you see John is approaching that automat. It's a food automat. It's almost like you don't go up and put an order in. It's a whole bunch of these little windows, and there's food. There's Jell-O, roast beef. You go up and put your money in and pull the thing out and take it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. It's automatic. Somebody's behind there cooking the food, and then they just put it out. Where the food is grabbed. The guy behind the window tells him, hey, buddy! Hey, you! I got your wallet. You left it here. John asks him... when he was there, he doesn't remember. The wallet is put on one of the windows as two cops walk in. They put in one of the little slots,
Yeah.
John starts to struggle with the window trying to open it. He doesn't have any money. His wallet is in the damn thing. So he's trying to get the thing open. Get to the window open to grab the wallet. It won't budge. John, scared the cops will grab him or turn toward the window. Or John is scared that the cops will recognize him for some reason and grab him.
Like he thinks maybe the they that are after them are police?
Maybe. He turns towards the window, and John thinks of his wallet for a few seconds, and the spring mechanism breaks and pops open. The window just breaks, as if it fell apart. John grabs his wallet, and as he's walking by, a cop stops John to harass him. But a female from outside named May comes in and saves John, telling the cops to find the killer on the loose and leave this poor guy alone. She's got work to do. John leaves with the girl.
Wasting my time.
So she must be a streetwalker, okay? She must be. John leaves with the girl because she's helping him get away from the cops.
Yeah.
She's like, you leave this poor guy alone. You should go catch that killer. Because it's not the first person that is dead is not the first person you see in John's room. There's been like 3 other murders. But John doesn't have his memory, so, So, okay, here we go. Named May comes in and saves John. John leaves with the girl and walks to her apartment. Back with the detective, he stands and describes 6 other murders of hookers. The cop says it's a shame what happened to Kalinsky. Kalinsky is another detective. The detective who was on the original murders case. The detective makes it to the bathroom and is confused. He turns to the cop and asks what kind of killer kills his victim but stops to save a fish.
Right.
Kalinsky comes barreling around the corner and bursting into the room screaming. He's being tackled by 2 cops as he enters the crime scene. Let me talk to Frank Bumstead! Bumstead! Frank! He's yelling this as he's tackled to the floor in the crime scene. They're watching us! There's no way out! God, can't you see? As he is dragged away. The detective visits... so as he's dragged away, the cop, the detective, he kind of shakes his head and has a very short conversation with what in the fuck happened to Kalinsky.
Yeah.
And the other guy's like, well, the cheese has slid off his cracker. He's not, He
done flipped a little bit.
Yep, he's crazy. So, in the next scene, the detective visits Walensky's office. Seems like a mad person was investigating things. Clipped articles and the circles that were carved into that lady.
String.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like a conspiracy theorist, meth addict's den. It looks insane. Let's see. Clipped articles and taped and pinned all over the wall. Some of the same circles were cut into the lady at the hotel. He determines Walensky is crazy and should be committed. Detective Bumstead is handed fingerprints and is alarmed about them somehow. John's wife enters the room and says she needs to... as he's leaving Bumstead's office, they pass in the hallway. John Murdoch's wife and Detective Bumstead. She tells him that she needs to file a missing person. She discusses John Murdoch with the detective, and he hands her a piece of paper and asks if they're if these people are familiar. 6 names. She says no. She tells her husband, she says no. He tells her husband may be wanted for these crimes because he just left Murdoch's hotel room.
Yeah.
She leaves upset as there must be a mistake. She doesn't believe it. She won't listen to him. She just leaves. So now...
Well, it almost kind of sounds like at this point that he was planted there.
Yeah, you're picking up on some stuff. You should watch this movie. I know I'm giving it all away to you, but you should watch it. So now it cuts back to John. So while his wife did that and walks away from this detective, it cuts to John in May's apartment. This other hooker or streetwalker. She's not called a hooker, but she clearly goes back to her room to get undressed, and spritz herself up like she's putting on a work uniform.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So she's a hooker. Or a street urchin, however you want to say it.
Streetwalker.
So John is in May's apartment. She gets undressed. He looks through his wallet. And he does see an ID with John Murdoch. He stands and asks that in her line of work, being a hooker, isn't that dangerous right now? How do you know I'm not the killer? She says, well, you don't seem the type. John sees as she's getting dressed in the next room. Like, he's kind of in her living room.
Yeah.
And she's in her bedroom with, like, danglies, you
Yeah.
know, that's not a door.
The beads.
Yep. And she's getting dressed or getting undressed and stuff and talking. And as John is there talking and saying these things, he turns and he sees she's got a daughter. Like a 8-year-old, 6-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
Something like that. She says, you don't seem the type. John sees the hooker's kid and he leaves the apartment. As she's finishing getting ready, he walks out the back door. Like, right down the steps, he leaves.
So now, whatever surveillance or whatever is around sees him leaving her. She's going to end up dead, isn't she? Her daughter, or both?
I do believe you are correct, but there's no surveillance. So John sees the hooker's kid and leaves.
Well,
he walks down the back steps and he gets down to the ground, he looks up and he sees a billboard for Shell Beach. So he starts to climb. He finds a way up there to the billboard. When he reaches, went up there, John reaches. So as he's walking along, he's looking. He puts his hand on it, and he reaches his hand into his coat that he put on at the hotel. At this point, he hasn't had his hands in his own pockets, pretty much.
Oh boy, does he find some interesting items?
Yes, he does. He reaches into his coat and he finds newspaper articles about the 6 other killings, cut out, each article like.
But the clothes aren't his.
No, they fit him.
Well, yeah, but the clothes can fit you and not be yours.
So he looks at the 6 newspaper articles, and now he's almost half convinced he is the killer. He's trying to figure out if he is, isn't he the killer, you know?
He just sounds like a scapegoat that somebody wants really bad.
Well, here we go. Here's where it picks up a little bit. This is where it starts to give some of the stuff away. John he collapses to the floor as 4 pale ones emerge from the shadows. So, it seems that you have discovered your unpleasant nature. He's talking like that.
Yeah, he's got like a lisp or a little hiss.
Yep. Now, this pale one, I do believe his name is Mr. Hand. Okay?
Like hand?
Like hand, yes.
Mr. Hand.
It's weird. Yeah, like Mr. Hand. Yeah. It's weird. John stands up.
Mr. Hand.
Who are you? Mr. Hand. We could ask you the same question. Pale one, another pale one, because there's 3 or 4 of them, raises his hand. Sleep. Sleep now. It doesn't work. The pale one gets alarmed. They start to freak out a little bit. This guy has resisted their notion to sleep.
Pick me. I have an idea.
What's that?
Was there something in that syringe that made him immune to these pale ones?
No. But you're not wrong. You're not right either. You'll see. It's gonna pick up and then, yeah. So, all right. It doesn't work. The pale ones get alarmed. And they all start pulling blades. Like switchblades almost. One of the pale ones falls through the rickety floor. So like as John was walking across, you could see some of the boards moving and stuff.
Yeah, buckle and...
Yep, well as the 4 approach him, one of them, John looks at the floor too. I don't know if like at the automat, how the thing popped open, if it did the exact same thing, but the floor breaks through and this guy gets wrapped up in a rope.
Yeah.
One of the pale ones. And falls to the rickety floor. The other 3 pull blades and approach John. John panics as he did in the diner. And from his mind, it seems, he collapses the floor behind the 3 pale ones. So now he's sending the other 3 ones down. He looks at the floor and the first one falls. He looks again and he seems to have made it happen this time. All 3 of them fall.
So he's like, yeah, okay.
Okay. John backs up to the rail. Oh wait, hold on. I missed something. Sending one to the ropes to get hanged, and this happens. As this happens, one of the pale ones yells, "He can tune!" Tune, he called it. He can tune. John backs up to the rail, and as John backs up to the rail, he thinks these people have fallen to their death or whatever, right?
Yeah.
He backs up to the rail, and Mr. Hand is floating behind him. He's flying. He's hovering in the air right behind him with his blade out.
Yeah, I can see it. And floating up like Beetlejuice.
Yep.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, so as John notices this guy's behind him, he turns around to back up and he freaks out, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the guy underneath him, where the first pale one fell, is all wrapped up in the rope, like getting hung. Well, Mr. Hand lands and he walks and he starts to walk towards John. John jumps through the hole, grabs the pale one, and he starts ringing it like a fucking bell.
Yeah.
Okay, like a chime.
Yeah.
Well, on the sign itself, there's a hand going like this: "Welcome to Shell Beach." Well, as he pulls down, the cog breaks, and as the cog breaks, the hand comes sliding down, and it slices part of the skull of Mr. Hand, and what looks like a squid, kind of like tentacles, comes out. And then it screeches, and this thing like dissipates, and the body falls down.
Okay.
So Mr. Hand is dead.
Are they aliens?
Yes.
In meat suits?
Yep. You're about to. It's gonna give it all away here in just a second. But yeah. So you don't know what is happening at this point. You don't know what tuning is. You know, all you know is that he just killed something and it wasn't human.
I gather that tuning is almost like a psychic gifted ability to
Correct.
which he can reach out, like telekinesis,
Yep.
telepathy.
It's very much like telekinesis. Very, very,
Okay.
very much.
Yeah.
And it's going to explain how he's got it and where it came from. All of it. It's just going to take me a second to get to it. The gears that were waving the hand on the beach, and it swings the hand free, slicing the pale one's head halfway, decapitating it. As John climbs up the rope back to the floor of the sign, he sees what looks like tentacles where this thing's brain should be. And the other pale ones are all screeching, grabbing their heads. As the tentacles slide off the pale one's cranium and dies as John runs and escapes, as the other ones are clutching their heads and screeching. The camera pans down as if going underground. Here stands all sorts of pale ones. So it goes down, 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 and then it's almost like you're in a basement area.
So they're underground.
Under the city.
Maybe not actually underground, but they're very, the pale...
The camera literally goes through the buildings, down to the road, and then there they are.
Okay, so they are technically really underground.
Yes, they are under the city. Okay, let me see where I was. Pans down as if going underground. Here stands all sorts of pale ones. One seems in charge and is in front, Mr. Book. And he starts to talk. "What is to be done? This man is dangerous." Another pale one talks. "It is said he is capable of tuning." Another chimes in. "That is impossible." The pale one that was floating behind John at the billboard is dead. Dang it. Sorry, I messed up. My phone's being great.
So he's obviously a danger to this society or species or whatever they are.
Yeah, they're worried about him now.
Yeah, because he's special. He's like the one, right?
Yep.
A little bit.
So, not Mr. Hand. We'll call him Mr. Finger. He says, "We have seen it with our own eyes." Talking to Mr. Book. It's like the leader, like almost just asking questions. Like he'll say something and another one will stand up and just start chiming in, and then he'll sit down and another one will stand up and just start chiming in. It's kind of weird. But Mr. Book is like the leader. He seems to be the one in charge. The pale one that was floating behind John is dead. Mr. Book starts to, "We've seen it with our own eyes." And Mr. Book goes, "On occasion, the imprinting does not take. They behave erratically when they awaken. We find them wandering like lost children. But this one was different. Yes? What does the doctor say about this?" And another one stands up, Mr. Finger. "The doctor? He has failed to report in." His name wasn't Mr. Finger. It's never mind. Anyway.
It's just a reference name.
And what about Mr. Hand? Mr. Finger.
Dead.
Yep. Absolutely. That's
Done
funny.
for.
Come on, phone. Quit shutting off. Okay.
So, okay, can I give you what I'm thinking so far here?
Yeah.
Okay, so this alien race, weird underground alien octopi people,
They're very weird.
are performing experiments with humans, and they need a human to help them, and that's what Doc is. But then Doc got attached to this kid and was trying to save him.
You are so very close. So very, 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 very close. You're right on the money. Mr. Book says, they behave erratically when they awaken. We have found them wandering like lost children, but this one was different. Yes?
Human project gone awry.
Mr. Book, we will know nothing until we have him. Mr. Book sends many pale ones to find John Murdoch. Cut to the detective giving Mrs. Murdoch a ride home. They discuss if John is capable of murder. When she walks into her home, John is... okay, so the detective is giving her a ride home, and it's a very short scene, but they're basically figuring out, is John capable of murder? Like, he saved a fish? Like, what do you know of him? You know, he's trying to dig a little bit. She's like, no, I don't buy it. All this and that. She gets out of the car, and she heads upstairs into her apartment. When she walks in, John is in the dark. He's made it back home.
Uh-oh.
When she walks into her home, John is sitting in the dark. My phone keeps going dark, man. Sitting in the dark, smoking. She asks if he's punishing her and that she's worried. John says he found the keys in his pocket and assumed to live here, but has no recollection of any of it. She gives him the doctor's card and explains that the doctor is desperate to find him. She asks why he was seeing a doctor. And he says, because you had an affair and I was angry. Or she says, because I had an affair and you were angry. He explains he followed that, and then he starts to explain that he's got no recollection. He doesn't remember that. He doesn't remember packing a bag and leaving. He doesn't even remember being angry.
Yeah, he just remembers waking up
in the bathtub.
Being like, what?
He explains that he met that woman named May, and he followed her all the way back to her apartment just to test himself to see if he was a killer.
Yeah.
If he would get a twitch or
that little
feeling
itch to.
Yeah. To see if he was a killer, but the only feeling he had was wanting to leave. So he did. And he doesn't know who he is, but he knows he is not a killer. She tries to comfort him and says she believes John. As he notices the cop
detective standing right
is still
there.
Parked outside. John flees the apartment and is confronted by the detective in the hallway he pulls a pistol on him. So like he looks out the window and he sees the car, and as soon as he steps outside and takes 5 steps down the hallway, a gun is pulled on him.
Is this killer a separate entity or also related to the underground octopi people?
It's all related.
Okay.
Let's see here. Yep. John flees the apartment, is confronted by the detective. He asks John to turn himself in, as he is a suspect. And John gets behind his wife and starts to step backwards down the hall slowly. She's kind of in the way.
Yeah.
Okay?
Human shield.
Kind of. But she's kind of putting herself there. He's not pushing her, you know?
Yeah. Voluntarily stand up for their love.
The detective is willing to hear John out and figure out what happened. John tells him, "You won't believe me even if I try." John explains a group of men are after him. He starts to explain the pale ones, but stops. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? John's wife tackles the detective and tells John to run, and John flees. So he's backing up down the hallway while he's talking to the detective, and she is slowly walking towards the detective as he's got the gun out. Now it's pointed at her. So as she gets close enough, she jumps on the detective, and he bolts down the hallway to escape the thing. And of course, she weighs like a $105. He just stands up and chases after John.
Yeah.
But it was enough so that he wasn't shot trying to escape.
Give him just a couple seconds to beat feet and get the flip out of there.
Yep. Let's see here. John flees with the detective close behind. John enters into a dead end in a room and panics. As he does, a door appears to manifest behind him. So, like, he walks to a dead end and he pushes his hands. He turns around.
He tuned a door in.
He knows the detective is going to come around the corner, and when he turns back around, yes, a door has been tuned in. It appears to manifest behind him. He exits. He enters the door and shuts it. As the detective gets around the corner, John is gone, and all that there is a wall. The detective is stumped. He walks over and touches the wall. Like, where did this dude go? But the detective does, like, he slumps down the wall or whatever, and then he looks down and he notices that John Murdoch dropped the doctor's card.
Oh. Uh-oh.
Yep, so he picks up the doctor's card.
And he got to follow up on that lead now.
Right? John, now in a cab, is impatient, asking the cab driver, how much further? He sees a Shell Beach snow globe on the driver's dash. Things start to get interesting. And he asks the driver if he knows the way there. And he says, sure, the wife and I, we honeymooned there. Oh, shoot, 6 years ago. And then as he tries to explain how to get there, frickin' screen. As he tries to explain how to get there, the driver seems confused and no longer knows the way. Even though
so one of these
his memories say he visited there, he was there on honeymoon. But when he recollects now, he remembers the honeymoon, but he can't remember how to get back to the damn beach.
Huh.
Okay, and then it cuts back to the detective as he is talking to John's doctor. He made it to the doctor's office. He goes inside and he gets Schreiber, who is Kiefer Sutherland. The doctor says he's got an appointment and has no more time. Detective kind of thanks him because all he does is say, hey, what about John? And he goes, oh, he probably had a psychotic break. You should find him. He may be dangerous, And then they have a very, very short conversation. And wait, where was... Okay, yep. He says he has an appointment and he has to go. And he has no more time. The detectives thank him. Now, cut again. John's cab drops him off right outside where the detective is asking questions. And John overhears the detective say John doesn't seem to be a killer as he's talking to the doctor. So as they're having this conversation, he's like, he had a psychotic break. And he said, well, he doesn't seem like a killer. John is like observing them talk. He went back to find the doctor himself. The doctor explains to the detective that you just haven't dug deep enough. And he psychoanalyzes the detective for a second. He goes, let me tell you about you. He goes, you're the type that this, and that. And he hits it so... He hits the nail so hard on the head that this detective is like spooked a little bit by his reading of him.
Mm-hmm. Jedi mind tricked him, but it wasn't a mind trick. He
psychoanalyzes the detective, giving him unease at how spot on the doctor is, and then the doctor excuses himself. John waits for the detective to leave, and then he follows the doctor into an alley. Cut to a bathhouse. The doctor is in a pool. He seems concerned as a pale one approaches. Mr. Finger. Doctor, how unfortunate we had to come find you here. You know how uncomfortable we are around all this moisture. He starts walking around the pool. The doctor seems scared, looking from left to right and backing up as if looking for a corner to hide in, but there is none. He's in a pool. Mr. Finger continues. You failed to report in, isn't that correct? The doctor. I was frightened. You know I have a weak heart. The pale one. Your weakness is not your heart. We found this. The pale one holds up the syringe that was broken, left on the hotel, on John Murdoch's hotel room's bathroom floor. We must reproduce Mr. Murdoch's memories again, yes? I tried to imprint him, the doctor says. But he woke up. He knocked it out of my hands. I tried to stop him. He was too fast. Only fragments of memories remain. You just round him up. There have been strays before. Mr. Finger. He is no stray, Doctor. This one can tune. John hears this as he sneaks about the bathhouse. He sees the pale one, and he's listening to the doctor. The doctor, that's impossible! I thought you only had the ability. The pale one, we will remake his memories, Doctor, but not imprint. We need those for a different purpose. I will see you after the tuning. It's almost midnight after all. And Doctor, no more inconsistencies.
Ooh.
John makes a noise and almost alerts them that he's in the room. Like they both look around for a second and then they continue for a second.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you monitoring chat and everything?
Yeah,
all right.
it's...
Okay, just asking.
And
sometimes you have to exit it too and go back into it. Sometimes for it to repopulate. He says, I will see you after the tuning. So, okay, he makes a noise and they almost find him. Cut to the detective visiting Walensky's home. He attempts to talk to Walensky. He's in his room drawing circles, the same ones cut into the woman at the hotel. Walensky invites Frank in and scares the hell out of him. Walensky seems crazy. He starts telling Frank about the case. Found nothing. Started riding the subways. In circles. Thinking in circles. There's no way out, Frank. There's no way out, Frank. I've been over every inch of this city. Frank, you're scaring your wife, Walensky. Walensky says, go ahead.
Is this like one of those petri dish situations? Essentially, well, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Frank, you're scaring your wife, Walensky. Walensky pops off. She's not my wife. I don't know who any of us are anymore. You even really think of your past lately? I mean, clearly. When I try and remember, it just all falls apart and it unravels. Like it's not real. Like I've been dreaming. I'm me, but when I wake up, I will be someone else. Someone totally different. There is no case. He said, what about the case? What about the murders? He looks at Frank. There is no case. Telling him that it's all a sham. It's bullshit.
Ooh, snap.
When I wake up, I will be someone totally different. There is no case. It's just a big joke. And then as they're having this conversation, cut to John, following the doctor to a dead end. A door appears. The doctor did not tune. Someone is tuning for the doctor. A door appears. The doctor enters the door and disappears. The door disappears again. John walks to the end, follows to the dead end, and inspects where the door was. Cut to where the doctor is. The doctor enters some kind of device, almost like a roller coaster or a vehicle of some sort. Something you strap yourself into and it takes you to the underground location. Okay?
Yeah.
Enters some kind of device and it takes off down a tunnel. And then it shows pale ones fussing over what looks like a conveyor belt. On these conveyor belts, items are being messed with. Driver's licenses, identifications, love letters, books, socks, clothes are all being distributed. And they all have their place to go. It all makes sense in a second.
Well, they're building the perfect
all the way to love letters and are being distributed and or manufactured. The doctor is in his lab and there's test tubes everywhere. In his lab and there's test tubes everywhere and he picks one up and takes a smell. Did I get his oh yeah, and he gives a smell and he goes fresh and warm memory. And as he's walking, memories. He's making them. It's like liquid somehow.
Yeah.
He's like mixing literal memories. Some good, some bad, but painstakingly. Like he's an artist. Like it is a Rembrandt. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's painstakingly like making these...
Every minute detail is...
Yep. He describes it as a fresh, warm memory. He works to get these... he painstakingly works to get these memories just right as a pale one approaches, and tunes the doctor upside down and sends him floating upside down over a ledge. He starts to interrogate the doctor. This is Mr. Book. Mr. Book has not talked to the doctor since he disappeared. And Mr. Book is... I don't know... He wants to make sure the doctor is still on board, okay? Mm-hmm. So he sends him over out of his like there's a window, and he sends him out of this window over his out of his lab, and he's floating there upside down. We're getting close, I think. I knew this was going to go over. It took me 4 or 5 hours to write all this from watching the movie. Mr. Book. Why won't Murdoch sleep when we make everyone else during the tuning? Dr. Schreiber. I don't know. Maybe he is a step up the evolutionary ladder? A freak of nature? He is adapting to survive. What did you expect? Weren't you looking for the human soul? Isn't that what this purpose of this zoo is for? That's why you change people and things around every night? Their memories? You may have found what you were looking for, and it's about to bite you on the proverbial ass. The pale one puts the doctor back upright and sets him down. They had more of a conversation than that, but that was like the gist of it.
Yeah.
That maybe you've just spurred the next jump in evolution, and now it's going to bite you on your ass.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for, homie.
Correct. So the pale one, Mr. Book, the pale one, the leader. It requires several of our lifetimes to acquire our gifts. The idea that a simple man can develop the ability to tune is absurd. Something dings and it is time. Pails wander a big, a loud noise goes off, and they all start like shuffling about, like heading somewhere to like a...
Like to report to the main area
yes.
for a pep rally.
Where like Mr. Book was talking, and they're all standing up and talking. Yep, basically the same place. The Pales wander about with purpose, going to the main hall and gather together. Mr. Book looks up at a giant clock. It's a face, and as the face comes back, it's a giant clock. And Mr. Book looks up and says, "Shut it down." And as he does that, the clock stops at 12. As it does, the whole city falls asleep. Every car stops. The subway stops. Every person is asleep except John. He is the only one that is awake and is amazed at the sleeping city. He tries to wake people, slapping them, punching cars, beeping horns.
They're just out.
Underground at the Pales, they start to tune, and a large machine lifts up behind the clock and starts to spin. The same blur, like, I forgot to mention this, but there's a little blur when John looks at that, like the door and it broke open. The little blur happens. It shows something happened. A tuning has taken place. So
to differentiate.
Yep. As a large machine starts to crank up, the same blur you see where John tunes is emanating from the globe attached to this machine. As the machine starts up, John sees a building bursting from the ground, and it rises into the skyline as if it was always there, but it was just created.
Yeah. Like Insta World, Insta City.
Yep.
Kind of like WandaVision.
Yep. It also shows someone who fell asleep a poor man in a shack wake up as a rich man in a mansion, but with the rich man's memories. So no one will ever find out. Like, he doesn't wake up like, oh, I'm rich now? Oh, geez. Like, no.
Yeah,
he's
implanted. Been rich.
Correct. He's been rich. Even the way they talk changes.
Yeah.
It's displaying this stuff. So after John sees all this and he can't do nothing about it, he goes back and he tunes the door open himself. Oh, my fault. I'm sorry. The door is retuned. The doctor and some Pales step out of it. Okay? Mm-hmm. They're carrying a man on their shoulder. John watches as the doctor, they take this guy all the way into a house. They set him down. They implant memories in him. They move things around the house the way it's supposed to be. It's like they're setting him up to wake up and to fall right into who they are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like they never skipped a beat. And they do this on a massive scale across the entire city. The only one awake is John. John watches as the doctor implants memories on this person, injection between the eyes. John follows them to another place as they set those people up as well with a new home, new clothes, and new memories. The doctor has been helping the Pales. The Pales are inside the house and the doctor leaves them. Like the doctor's done, they're not.
Yeah.
So the doctor comes out of the house and John confronts the doctor as he leaves. And he freaks out on him, asking him every question he has. But the doctor just wants him to keep his voice down as the Pales are right inside.
Yeah, he's like, hey, shut up. They'll hear you.
John gets angry and tunes the poor doctor down the road. Like if the Incredible Hulk punched him.
Yeah.
Like he literally went flying down the road. John gets up, he tunes him. The doctor gets super excited. He stands up and his eyes are huge. And he says, he says, John, you have their power. You can change things as they do. Together with training, we can beat them. Take the city back.
Take the city back? I mean...
Yep. The door opens again and John, okay, I think I messed that part up. John files as the door opens. Again, tuning. Oh, John opens the door by tuning. Okay. And then it cuts back to the cabana where Mrs. Murdoch is singing again. Not very long, though. It cuts pretty quickly after that. Mr. Book is informed that imprinting on Murdoch can't be done. Oh, Mr. Book. Okay, so they're back in the underground and they're having a conversation about what they just changed in the city. Okay, mm-hmm. So Mr. Book assumes it was another, or Mr. Book is informed that imprinting on Road M can't be done, as Road M was not completed, meaning they did not finish their task. They always do. They always do. They did not finish their task this time. Mr. Book turns and states that he assumes it was another mental force exerting its will on the machine. John.
Yeah.
Murdoch. He is becoming like us, so in turn, we must be more like him. The doctor here has done what we asked. They strap Mr. Finger into a chair to administer John Murdoch's Memories, Volume 2, into a Pale's head. So they now know what John does to find him. Because John is getting blips of memories. So the next place he goes is going to be a kind of a little flash of a memory. Mm-hmm. All right, we are at 2 hours, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how much more we got here, but all right. So they got Mr. Finger, the pale one, strapped down, and the doctor's going to inject John's memories. Mm-hmm. The one that John smacked away from himself when he was trying to inject John. John's memories flood into the pale one. John inspects the postcard and tracks down Carl Harris. So as this guy is like flashing through John's memories, John is having, it's kind of cut back and forth, really kind of weird. Yeah. But John has a memory of Shell Beach and his Uncle Harris, and the pale one is getting like all of John's Murdoch's wife's flashes and information. Yeah. So they're going to be going to two different places.
Yeah. They're diving deep on this one.
Yep. So, okay. The Pales try and find John and where he was and maybe where he is going. So at this point in the movie, the Pales are kind of running around looking for John. Yeah. And John is not being found. John is in that cab heading towards trying to get to Shell Beach or to his Uncle Harris, mm-hmm. who the postcard was made out from. You know? Mm-hmm. I didn't mention that earlier either. So John gets out of the cab, and he goes into the subway. And he sees a train line going to Shelby Beach. He thinks he can get there. So what he starts to do is he gets out of the cab, he gets onto a train, and he starts going in circles, the same as the Walensky guy was saying. Yeah. He rode the trains and went in circles. And he's almost going to get to Shell Beach, and he gets off at the stop he's supposed to, and a Shell Beach train goes screeching by, doesn't even stop to pick anyone up. And he asks the guy, one of the tellers, he goes, hey, how come that didn't stop for Shell Beach? And he goes, oh, well, that one's late, or it should be. And then that guy gets confused, and he can't explain why that train didn't stop to pick anyone up to go to Shell Beach.
Everything is like...
Yeah. The more they try to recollect, it breaks down. You know, it fades. So after multiple attempts, he gets nowhere, and at that point, he gets tired, and he goes to sit on a bench. He sits down, and he hears someone say, there's no way out, It's Walensky. He's sitting on the bench. And he said, there's no way out, I seen him steal our memories and swap them between us all back and forth until we don't know who we are anymore. Once in a while, one of us will wake up and notices. That's when they will come for you. They came for me. But I did finally find a way out. As he says that, a train car's coming and he jumps in front of the train and kills himself. He found his way out, which was death. His only way out.
Damn.
Cuts back to the Pales. The Pales are still searching for John. They find May, and they ask questions. Now, the pale one, Mr. Finger, I'm calling him. That's not actually his name in the movie, but just to make it simple, his name's Mr. Finger. Who got John's memories? He got all the memories. So it is literally making him a killer as well. So not only was like their minds not built to hold human memories, but the stuff they were trying to imprint and to change John into a murderer is changing him.
Yeah.
So he kills May. He pulls out a knife and he carves symbols into her and everything, just as if he was the original serial killer.
Wow.
Yeah. He asks where John was going, and she doesn't know where he was heading. And then he kills her. They find May and ask her questions, and they leave after her death. The Pales search more for John, but find his wife, Mrs. Murdoch. And the pale Mr. Finger talks and scares her as he says the same things John had once said, like when they first met. And as he shares this memory, he asks where John is going next, and she says she doesn't know. So, like, he's in there. It's like a cat and mouse kind of thing. He's saying things that are really creeping her out, and she doesn't feel comfortable around this dude, but he doesn't hurt her.
Yeah.
He literally leaves.
Just enough to, like...
She knows something's fucked with him.
Yeah.
So, okay, it cuts back to John. John keeps trying to exit the city and can't get out. John's wife finds May and sees she's dead. So she goes looking for John. She finds May, goes into her place, and she's dead. As she flees, she runs into the detective.
Oh, snap.
Yep. John finds, it cuts back to John. Yep, we're going to start speeding up here.
I just wanted to apologize, guys. I'm not very good at this whole keeping track of the chat. But when he's done, we're going to circle around and answer some of your questions if he hasn't already.
Yep. We'll circle back. I also have a couple of photos I want to show you, just a reference for pale ones and all that stuff.
And I just want to apologize for my noobness.
So it cuts back to John. John keeps trying to exit the city and he can't get out. John's wife finds May and sees she's dead, and she flees and she runs into the detective. Now at this point, it's kind of up in the air if she thinks John did that or what. So it cuts back to John. He finds his Uncle Carl. He shows up and he knocks on the door and he's let in. And he's looking at old photos with him. as his Uncle Harris is, telling him about, trying to fill him in on his past a little bit.
Yeah. Just describe why he's special and can tune.
Absolutely. So, John asks how to get back to Shell Beach. And his uncle, he can't remember, which is stumping him too. Like, doesn't seem right he can't remember. He lived there.
Right.
Like,
that was such an incremental part of your life.
Yep. And his uncle, he gives him a little pamphlet, that he drew in when he was a kid, like a journal or something. Mm-hmm. And he's flipping through the pages and it's blank. And then he looks at a picture. His uncle tells him, he says, well, what about my past? What about my mom and dad? And he goes, well, Johnny, you don't remember what happened to them? He said they died in a fire. You got burned real bad. You don't remember that you came to live with us after that.
Yeah.
So he looks at this photo that his uncle hands him, and it's him as a kid, right? But not like 8 or 7 or whatever when it first showed him in the dock and the beach and stuff. It shows him at like 15 leaning up against something, and he's got a giant burn on his arm. And he looks at his uncle. Let's see. Looking at a photo of a scar on his arm, he figures out the photos are fake. So he goes, this is all bullshit. That's fake.
Yeah.
I wasn't in a fire. And he goes, Johnny, what do you mean? And then he pulls his shirt up and he shows he doesn't have a scar. Now his uncle is really alarmed and he's like, what in the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
So
pump the brakes.
Okay, now it cuts back to the detective and Miss Murdoch. As she was running out of the place, she bumped into the detective, and they go back in. Mrs. Murdoch finds May's kid. There's a picture drawn by the kid that shows 3 pale ones with a knife standing over her mother. The detective picks it up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the detective kind of sees something's going on here. Back at Uncle Harris, John asks how he missed the daytime. During this whole time, this whole movie, it's been nighttime. There has been no daylight. The sun has never risen. The sun has never gone down. It goes from 12 p.m. back to 12 p.m. or p.m. and then they tune. They shut everything down.
Mackenzie says the movie sounds a lot more wild than the book. Yes, it does. Very much so.
Back at he asks how he missed the daytime. Is it 12 p.m. or a.m.? Where did the sun go? How could we have missed it? Uncle Carl called John's wife and told her that he was there. The clock hits 12. While he's on the phone with her, they both fall asleep. But John, in a pale, heard Murdoch's wife get the call from Carl or from Harris. They now know where John is. So then it cuts to the front of Uncle Harris's house, and the Pales approach. John, when they come in, John runs from them. John gets the drop on a Pale and tries to get answers. But all that is said while he's holding him is the city is theirs. They made it from stolen memories. Different areas to learn. Stolen memories. To learn what makes you human. John asks, "What are you?" It's Mr. Finger or one of the other ones because there's 3 or 4 that travel in a group. 3.
Mm-hmm. They're pack creatures.
Yep. He says, "You have seen us. We use your dead as vessels." John falls off the roof of the building they were on because as he's holding him and struggling, they're going up and up and they end up on top of a building. And John, he does it say, stolen memories? You have seen us. We use your dead as vessels. John falls off the roof as the building changes. So as they're tuning, like the building is changing underneath them.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So instead of a flat roof, it turned into a peak. One of them roll one way or, something like that.
Yeah.
Let's see here. John rides rides parts of the building down,
Yeah.
here and there until the city awakens. John descends some more stairs, and he sees, like, on the outskirts, the fire escape, because the building is, like, literally morphing and shifting, and it's real weird. Some stairs. He sees a pail, and he runs into the detective and John's wife. So, like, as he makes it down the fire escape, the pails are coming, and a car comes squealing up and goes sideways and opens a door. It's his wife and the detective. He jumps in the car, and they take off. We're getting there. I think we're going to be done by 9:30. So the detective and John's wife pick up John. John goes to the police headquarters as John is interrogated. And explaining his thoughts, John finally asks the detective if he knows how to get to Shell Beach. The detective can't explain or remember how. Then John asks when is the last time he remembered being outside in the daytime. John explains he has been up hours and hours, and there is no sun in this place. John begins to tune, and he lifts a notebook off of the desk for the detective to see it, like it's magic, John explains to his wife, to him. John's wife looks at him and says, tries to apologize for the cheating or whatever, whatever made John angry the 3 weeks before. And John, where am I at? Someplace I'm not gonna feeling. John asks how last time you remember being outside in the daytime. John explains he has been up hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, and then she apologizes for cheating on him.
Yes, John explains to his wife that her memories are fake. She didn't cheat on him, hurt him.
Are they even married then? Like,
it's whatever their memories were implanted. Both of them were a different person before the tuning. Before he woke up in the bathtub. Like, they go around and they implant memories into people.
Yeah.
And change their house, change their property. All of that. Okay, the detective is stumped and feeling like Walensky. Like he's going crazy now. The Pales enter the police department and start putting people to sleep. One at a time. Sleep, Yeah. And they all start going to sleep. The Pales enter the apartment. The detective grabs keys. Okay, so at this point, John's done being interrogated. He moved him to a cell. And he's putting two and two together, the detective in his head while he's in his own little office.
Yeah.
He's like, man, this shit doesn't make any... About the time he figures out that John may not be... That maybe even Walensky isn't fucking crazy, he grabs the keys and he goes to release John from his holding cell. Okay.
And then does he run into some Pales?
Let's see. The detective grabs the keys and frees John as the Pales make it to the chief. And when the chief talks to them, takes them to an empty room, they kill him. He takes him to John, but John's not there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. John somehow makes it back to the bathhouse for another talk with the doctor. So it cuts and it goes back to, it's not explained. Is he with the detective still or anything? But it cuts back to the doctor hiding in the water in the pool and in the bathhouse type area. And he asks him, what in the hell are you doing here? Like, what is this place? And the doctor explains, I feel safer here because the Pales have an aversion to water. Some would call it a phobia. You, John, are a subject of their experiment. We all are. And you're not crazy or a murderer. The doctor pulls a gun out and holds it at John and offers him a syringe. Look, I don't have the luxury to do this the right way. We are almost out of time, as the detective pushes a pistol behind the doctor's ear. So the doctor pulls out a pistol on fucking John, and right behind him, the detective pulls the pistol out on the doctor.
Yep.
John takes the syringe from the doctor and puts it in his coat, his chest pocket. The doctor, all the answers you're looking for, I promise, are in that syringe. They ask how to get to Shell Beach to the doctor. The doctor shakes his head like in impatience, and it cuts to them driving in the detective's car. They're driving and driving and driving, and they pull up to where a bridge should be, but is missing. Like, the bridge should extend all the way across, but it doesn't. It's like half missing.
Yeah,
like they pull
half
up,
built.
Yep.
The picture didn't load all the way.
They pull up to a bridge that should be there, but is missing. They get into a rowboat, and they start to row out into the water. And the doctor the whole time is, there's nothing there. We shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
You know, and he's continually trying to get John to inject the syringe into his head.
Yeah.
And then as they're in the boat, let's see where the bridge be. Murdoch's pale. Okay. Yep. And in the boat, the doctor starts more explaining. First, there was darkness. Then came the strangers. They abducted us, brought us here, this city, and everything in it is their experiment. Swapping memories as they see fit, trying to find what makes us unique, even studying killers, setting up a backstory and a family. Will you continue to be a killer in that vein, or rebel and change? Are we just merely the sum of our memories? See, you just happened to wake up this time, but you have many, many different lives, memories. It is our capacity for individuality, our souls that make us different than them. They think they can find the soul if they understand how our memories work. They share a group mind, and they're dying, you see. Their entire race is headed for extinction, and they think we can save them. You see, John, you have their ability to tune. That's how they built this city. There is a machine underground that helps them focus their tuning telepathic energies. They control everything here, even the sun. That's why it's dark. They can't stand the light. They need my skills, so they used me, and I made new memories for them, and helped them until you, John. You see, you were never a boy in this place. It's all fabricated, as it is with all of us. John and the detective and the doctor leave the boat. They climb out and they climb onto a shore. And they come to a dead end. A giant brick wall, right?
Yeah.
And this time, instead of a billboard, it's like a old poster of Shell Beach put across the brick wall. It's just a brick wall and a poster of Shell Beach.
Wow.
With a Shell Beach image on the wall. Pissed off, John and the detective start bashing at the wall, trying to break through it. There's a few pipes on the ground and a few other things, and they start picking this stuff up, and they start chipping away at this brick wall. And eventually they make a hole, and the hole breaks open bigger, and all there is deep space. It's like looking out of a space station window.
Damn, so they were abducted from Earth.
It's just deep space beyond that wall.
Damn.
All there is deep space on the other side of the wall. John and the detective are shocked as the Pale says, as the finger shows up and says, "Now you know the truth, Murdoch." The detective shoots and wrestles with a Pale, because there's like 3 of them.
Yeah, because they travel in packs.
Yep. And I think he kills one, and he struggles with another, and as he's struggling, they both fall out of the hole, and then once they get past a certain area, they both are dead, and they just keep floating off, as if into, eternity.
Yeah.
So the detective is dead, and another Pale is dead. Both fall into outer space, floating away for what looks like a thick... so as they're floating out...
Mackenzie goes, "Major plot twist, was not expecting that."
Okay, so as...
Me either.
Okay, so as they float out, right, into space, like, it shows behind them as they're floating, and you can see the city for what it is, okay? Think of a giant quarter floating in space. Really thick quarter, but a giant quarter, and on top of it is a city, and underneath it is a giant tuning machine. And that's it. It's not a globe. That's it. It's like a giant flat pancake.
Weird.
Yep. Okay, we're almost done. We're getting to the end. Okay. And they both fall into outer space. John, wait, hold on. For what looks like a thick plate with a city on one side and a huge machine under it. The Pales tell John to give up or they will kill his wife. Then John gives in as the Pale says sleep, and John goes unconscious. So they're going to kill his wife. And he's like, what does it matter? She's not my real wife anyway. And when they go to do it, he gives in. So they're like, sleep, and he doesn't sleep. And then they go, sleep, and he finally shuts his eyes and wills it to happen. He allows it to happen.
Yeah.
John goes to sleep. John goes unconscious. Deep underground, they take him, and he wakes. They put him back to sleep. So, like, as they're, like, going through the machine, like the doctor was in, as it was going down and around, like, he wakes up again, and they're like, sleep, and they keep putting him to sleep.
Well, he's letting it happen, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So he's, like, stirring, and then they're like...
This is his ploy to get to the center of the machine and just wreak havoc on everything. Right?
Sort of. So deep underground, they take him, and he wakes, and they put him back to sleep. They strap him down and inspect him. Book approaches, says he has evolved, as another shouts, kill him! As everyone starts joining in.
Yeah.
Mr. Book calls the doctor to him and gives him a syringe and instructs him to give it to John. Mr. Book says, shut it down forever. And that they don't need the others in the city anymore, whatever that means.
Yeah.
The doctor takes the syringe and lays it on John's chest and pulls the syringe from John's pocket and starts to inject him. As he does, John gets flooded. Now they're arguing, like, they're all screaming and they're getting ready to tune for the final time. Nobody's paying attention to the doctor. The doctor walks over and he puts the syringe on John's chest and he reaches in and grabs the one from his pocket, the one that he was going to give, that he was going to force John to take.
Yeah.
Okay. Pocket, and he starts to inject him. As John does, John gets a flood of memories. One with the doctor serving him ice cream as a child, telling the young boy, you're important, and one day you will understand. And then it cuts to a next scene. Next, he is like a 10-year-old, or it's a year or 2 years later. The doctor is a mailman delivering mail to John's house. You're doing great! Just as he's turning... you're doing great, as John is drawing, sitting on the porch, as the mailman's putting in the thing. You're doing great, John! Like, John's drawing without using his hands. He's tuning.
Wow.
So the doctor is training him how to tune through memories. And if you're injected with memories, you're going to have memories of 20 years or 40 years of practice.
Right.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. Tells the young boy that he's important, one day he'll understand, and that he's drawing without it. The doctor is a teacher in school, telling him, I have inserted myself into your memories, so you have a lifetime of knowledge about them. This is the machine the strangers use to take control. This is the machine the strangers use. You must take control of it, John. You must make the machine yours. I know you can beat them. John opens his eyes. He has full memories and recollections. Whatever was in that tube is now in his head. Their syringe is now in his head. And in those memories, he trained for years to end the Pales and to take their machine for his own. The platform he is strapped to swings around and sits him straight up. The restraints and even the device he was strapped into all turns to bullshit and just like turns to nothingness into the floor. Like he wills it gone. The Pales all start to panic. John starts tuning and throwing the Pales around. Mr. Book attacks John with his own tuning, throwing John and Mr. Book about. John and Mr. Book are in like a psychic telepathic battle, so to speak. They're tuning at each other while a whole bunch of shit is going on around them. All hell is breaking loose. They seem to be in a stalemate as the room starts to be tore apart. A bunch or most of the Pales die at this point, as John and Mr. Book float up toward the machine that is now starting to tear the city apart. At the top of the city skyline, Mr. Book, so now like they go from underground all the way up, and they keep going up, 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 and now they're above the city skyline.
Yeah.
almost like Superman and and Zod or whatever. It's kind of like that, but they're up there at the skyline. Mr. Book throws a dagger at John that goes really fast right toward him. John stops it by tuning right at his head. He turns it and he starts to force it back at Mr. Book, but they're both struggling over this dagger.
Yeah. Changes hands several times, so to speak.
Yep. And then, with a mighty push with his tuning, John sends the dagger hurtling towards Mr. Book, killing him. John lands, he falls. John lands by the doctor. And the doctor says, you see, I could make these machines do it. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He lands by the doctor. The doctor looks at him and John says, you said I could make these machines do anything? As long as I concentrated hard enough. The doctor says, yes, John. So John starts to concentrate. And the machine... Okay, I left one part out. As they took John... Right, and they brought him down to the underneath when he got his training memories. Mm-hmm. They took his wife and they changed her. They gave her all new memories. She's a different person now. She'll never remember John Murdoch. She won't remember being John Murdoch. I think her name's Lily now, or Lilith, or I don't know, something like that. But they changed her memories. Okay, I'm saying this because I'm about to finish, and I wanted the end to make a little bit more sense. So okay. Sends the dagger hurling towards John lands by the doctor. You said I could make these machines do anything, as long as I concentrated enough. John concentrates and the machine starts amplifying his tuning abilities, and it's so much more powerful than when the Pales did it. John causes water to burst forth. It's like a coin floating in space, right? Mm-hmm. Well, there was like the easy way to like pipes or manhole covers that were on the edges. Mm-hmm. But the Pales didn't like water. Yeah. So anyway, John, he turns on all this water, and water starts to flood the area around this fucking coin that's floating in space. And if the water's not falling and it's not going up, it's staying level with the coin, as thick as the coin is, but it's making the coin more round. You know what I mean? With the water, circumference, whatever. So water starts pouring out. Where are you going? After okay. He fills the outer ring with water, and then the doctor asks as he's walking away, where are you going? John turns and says, Shell Beach. Cut to John's wife. She wakes up at a movie theater that must be her job now. Because like the tuning stopped, and the clock started ticking, and she woke up and she was like taking movie tickets or selling tickets. She shuts it down and she leaves. She boards a bus and she leaves. That's the last you see her for a second. And then John approaches where the detective floated off, through that hole. And there is a door that John creates. And he opens the door and bright light comes in. Or no, I'm sorry, it does not. He opens the door and it's dark, but you can see beach, right? And you can see a lighthouse that he made. So it looks like Shell Beach. With a light. Okay, he walks to the door. And the last remaining Pale who's alive, Mr. Finger, is standing behind him. And he tells John that now they're both one with with his memories, and he explains that your memories don't fit well inside of us, and in that he's dying, and he asks John, what is he going to do now? And he said one last thing. John concentrates really fucking hard, and that goddamn saucer, pancake, coin, whatever, it fucking flips in space, and he tilts it until the sun appears. It was flipped the opposite way because they didn't like the sun. Yeah. So they never experienced the sun. Well, he flips it. And once he flips it, he opens the door. The sunlight pours in and kills the Pale behind him. And as he steps out onto the beach, it's Shell Beach. and he walks down by the lighthouse, and he walks down the dock, and his wife is standing at the end, and they introduce themselves to each other as new people because they don't. John remembers, she doesn't.
Yeah, so he's just playing along by this point.
Yes, and they walk, and he introduces himself in the same manner that his memory recollected, but she won't because she's a different person now, if you know what I'm saying.
Yep.
Like the way that Mr. Finger made her feel uncomfortable by saying the same shit that John had said once.
Yeah.
He said those same things, and she looks at him kind of weird, and they like hold hands and start walking down the pier. Like they're starting a new relationship. That's the end of the movie.
Interesting.
It was a very wild, wild movie. Go ahead and start chatting here for a second. I'm going to go over here and show a couple images real quick. You guys stuck with us all this time. Thank you so very much. Let me see here. Oh, yep. I got to click something here.
Maddie says, kinda reminds me kind of Altered Carbon on Netflix.
Okay. This here... Oh, damn it. It got all small. That sucks. This here is Mr. Book. The Pale. Here's one of the posters for Dark City. That is the clock that's behind them where they would say, shut it down. Here is the thing that John was strapped into when he got his memories back for the training. There's Kiefer Sutherland as the doctor. It was just pretty fabulous. It's a great movie. You guys should check it out. But I'm going to go back to Sierra now.
Yeah.
There you are. You're back.
I definitely appreciate you guys popping on in and coming along for my first journey with the podcasting stuff. And yes, very much so a little creepy, Mackenzie. Very much so.
Yeah, it's a very creepy movie. I mean...
And then...
But it was basically, you picked it up right away, that it was basically a Petri dish.
I guess I just had this weird idea that for some strange reason it was still on Earth. Like, I don't know why, but...
Well, it shows you the city and it makes you think that, but it never shows you daylight. And by the middle of the movie, you're like, yeah, that is weird.
Yeah.
And then, but the overall thing is that I guess these aliens were dying out and they were looking for our soul or for what made us
life
unique.
Source.
Something that made us tick that would help them stay alive.
Yeah.
Yep. It was very, very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know what else you would like to say, but I think we've went way over. So
yeah. Other than how do you have your movie picked for the next time we do this? Because I've got a book picked.
Yeah, I know. Not exactly.
We don't have to announce it. Like you can just throw a tweet out later. Or something.
I will. I will tweet it out. Or what? No, I'll just pick a damn movie. Describe your next book, and while I think for a sec.
Just from the little blurb I read, it is a book about kinda if you could change it, what would you do different? Like, if you had all these choices to make, would you make the same choices? Would you, you know. It's called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I probably said his name wrong, so I apologize. But, yeah, it just, the little blurb caught me. The book cover caught me when I was scrolling through books on Amazon. And, so, William actually got it for his birthday, and he's gonna be a sweetheart and let me read it first. So... I'm really excited to crack the page and see, usually, like, I don't like to start another book after I've finished the one, like, I could have started and had another book read after I finished Flowers for Algernon, but it clouds my brain, like.
And what was the name of your book?
The Midnight Library.
Okay, and the last book you just read was Flower for Algernon's, and you gave it 4.75 book marks?
Almost 4. I gave it a
3.
3.75.
Oh, 3.75. Okay. Well, the Dark City movie I would give 8 out of 10. So definitely go watch it. I think that it is a good movie.
Sounds very
and
trippy.
The next movie I will be watching, I do believe it is on Netflix. Maybe it's not. Anyway, it's going to be called Greenland. John Garrity, his estranged wife, and their young son embark on a perilous journey to find sanctuary. So Greenland will be my next movie.
And The Midnight Library will be my next book. We both invite you to watch the movie and or read the book, so that way if you...
Nothing spoiled?
Yeah, and if you want to jump on in the live stream and, you know, make it like a little book club, make it like a little movie club. Like, the goal here is to have fun, and with everything going on in the world, man, I just think,
Gotta do something.
Doing something together would be better than not, I guess. So, you know, we just want to thank you for stopping in and checking it on out. And hopefully you guys give us the opportunity to keep going. So, thank you. Have a good night.
Absolutely.
Stay safe and be kind to people, please. And, you know, just... Yeah. Bye.